And joining us now, Curt Blades with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Curt, great to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, Jesse.
Curt, let's take a look at those May equipment numbers and really continuing with strong growth according to the latest data. Let's look at the U.S. first and break down what we saw in those May numbers for us.
Well, as you say, we're continuing to see really strong numbers in tractor and combine sales in the United States. Really, kind of across all sectors, although we did see some decline in the smaller horsepower tractors. The under 40 horsepower tractors saw an 8% decline for the month of May, but you got to keep in perspective, we're still up 26% year to date in that particular sector. So that's still pretty solid news. We saw growth in chore tractors, 40 to 100 horsepower, about 6%, and a jump of 28% in the 100 plus horsepower tractors. So strength across the board on those. It's showing that shows an ultimate kind of a decline for the month because of that decline of that 40 horsepower, but we're still seeing 25% up for the entire year for all tractor classes. So I'll take that as solid number.
Definitely. And I think that just reflects, again, we talked about this last month, but more of the U.S. kind of coming out of the pandemic, the economy kind of, continuing to rebuild itself, so to speak. I think that's a testament to that, especially on the ag side.
Absolutely. And on the ag side, it's no mistake. We've seen some really great commodity prices. We've seen, a lot of those, storm clouds that have sort of stood in the way of farmers feeling optimistic about what the future is going to hold, starting to wane a little bit. China continues to want to buy our grain. That's a good thing. Livestock prices are doing pretty good. The commodity prices look pretty good, and there's a good looking crop in the ground. Now we've got some weather concerns that always happen about this time of year, but overall there's a lot of optimism out there in the farmer community, and that's leading to them feeling comfortable making some capital investments. So we welcome that.
Curt, what about our friends to the north in Canada? Let's look at those numbers for the month of May. What do we see there?
Well, the Canadian numbers are much like the United States, still continuing to show a lot of strength. In fact, in some of the categories, even more strength. So, tractor sales for Canada for the month of May are up 22% across the board, but for the year they're up 50%. So that's a pretty sizable number. Now, by comparison, Canada was a little bit slower to recover than the U.S. has been. So the U.S. has had this strong market for the last 12 months. The strong market in Canada has been about the last 8 months. So playing a little bit of catch up. But I'll tell you what, Canada optimism is looking pretty good as well, and especially in that Western Canada where there's been some real concerns. I think there's some indications that perhaps the ag economy's turning around out there, and that was some much needed relief up in Canada.
For sure. And looking as well, Curt, here as we move forward, and I know the AEM, you guys look at a lot of data. Are there any sectors of the equipment side that you're looking for continued growth or more growth here as we get into the summer months and beyond?
Well, I'm really thrilled to see the strength in the ag numbers. The story for the last year has been the small horsepower tractors, the under 40 horsepower tractors. And, those are great numbers. And again, 26% year to date growth. That's fantastic. But I think we also got to recognize at some point you reach market saturation for that particular market. Plus, we do have some, well-documented supply issues among everything in the United States. It's just tough to get bicycles or cars or small tractors. And so, at some point, I don't see that necessarily dramatically affecting the sales, but it's factoring in. And I think it manifests itself a little bit stronger in that under 40 horsepower space. So as I look forward, I'm thrilled that the ag market is showing strength because that's where the growth is probably going to continue, and you're probably going to see some leveling out of that under 40 horsepower market for the foreseeable future. Not that it's not continues to be hot, it just may not be growing at the rate that it's been growing for the last few years.
You mentioned supply chain issues, and I know that's something we kind of keep in the back of our mind. And I mean, it's hard to get, like you mentioned, certain things around the world right now. Do you foresee that becoming a bigger problem in ag? Because it seems like outside of maybe, you mentioned a little bit with small tractors, but otherwise, I mean, it seems like ag hasn't been as hard hit as some other industries have right now.
Well, I mean, Jesse, it's universal. I mean, we're part of, ag is part of the global supply chain. So, as semiconductors, manifest themselves as a problem from everything to toasters and to automobiles, obviously it's going to affect us as an industry. Um, I think there have been pockets that have done particularly that have been less affected, and there's some that have been more affected. The one thing that we've been trying to make sure we stay on top of, because of the time sensitive nature of agriculture, we want to make sure that we got those wear parts where they need to be. I mean, if you talk about priorities, obviously we want new equipment out there. We want everything to be supplied. But when given a priority, you want to make sure that those wear parts make it out there into farm country before planting happens. Because if the crop doesn't go into the ground, we got bigger problems. So that's number one. And then number two, answer to your question is like, what does it look like in the future? I think the best solution for our supply chain issues, frankly, is going to be a little bit of time. Calendar's just got to move forward a couple more months, because it's this this python that swallowed something big. It's just got to make it through the system for us to deal with some of these global supply chain issues. Now, dealing with the structure long term, obviously that's a different conversation. But the effect that we're going to see among your listeners and how it affects your ability to get cars, trucks, tractors, or pinball machines, that's just going to take a little while. There's no silver bullet other than just a little bit of time.
Curt, any other final thoughts you have for us on the May equipment numbers or anything else?
Well, I think we didn't talk on combines, which also continue to show some real strength. I mean, the bright shiny spark that's fun to talk about are tractors, but boy, combines are showing strength as well in the U.S. and in Canada. So when we talk again, let's talk about combine technology.
I think we'll have to do that. With that, Curt Blades with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers joining us to talk about the May equipment numbers. I appreciate the time, Curt. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You bet. Thanks.